Hey everyone, it's Andrew Wilson, aka Barney Builder. It's been a couple months since I did my last video, and it's been a couple years since I've done my last build video. And I've been working on a really fun project over the past couple of weeks. I've been building a Twinken Animatronic replica from Barney's Great Adventure. And I filmed the whole process, and that's something I wanted to share with you today on how to build a Twinken Animatronic. So without further ado, let's watch. So a couple months ago, I commissioned a friend of mine, his name is Rand Dagger, to design a 3D model of Twinken for me to print off on my 3D printer. I had him design it in pieces, and so it would be easier to print and take apart and easier to mold. And so right now what you see me doing, I'm making a silicone mold of each of these pieces of Twinken. There's a head, his arms are separate, his body, and then his 2 feet are separate. And I'm basically, for this foot that I'm molding that you see me here doing, I'm making what's called a block mold, which is basically gluing the piece you want to mold in either a little box, or right here I have a container, that plastic container I'm molding it in, and you go ahead and just dump silicone on top of it, and it sets pretty quickly. This is I think it took about 2 hours to cure, so it's a pretty fast acting silicone. And from there you just go ahead and slice it open with a razor and pull the foot out. And from there I'm going to be using a 2-part foaming agent to pour in there, and I'll basically have a foam duplicate of that foot now. Now for the head, and doing the same thing with the body, block mold would have been way too expensive to mold the larger pieces. To give you frame of reference, those gallon buckets of silicone right there cost me over $270, and so it was a pretty pricey project. But I decided to do a brush-on mold, which would use a lot less silicone. And so basically I'm using a thin coat of silicone on the first layer, and I used a thickening agent in the silicone. I'm building up a couple layers on top of that, and just so I'm having have a little skin on it, so it's thick enough to hold up to the expanding film that I'm going to pour into with the mold. Now with brush-on molds, I am going to need a hardening wall to cover the mold, so when I do pour the foam into it, it doesn't blow up and basically lose the shape of the head. And so how I'm doing that, I'm using a 2-part epoxy. You just measure it out 1-to-1, and you build up these little walls on top of it, and it'll cure in like an hour. It's really fast. And once it's cured, it's like rock hard. So it's really nice, and the silicone will come off of it pretty easily. Now, what I'm doing right here, I'm using petroleum jelly to insulate the first part of this mold from the second. If I just put more of the 2-part epoxy onto this mold from here, it would stick to itself, and that silicone would be trapped inside, which I don't want. And so going ahead and putting petroleum jelly, building up a layer of aluminum foil, and then some more petroleum jelly on top of that. And that'll give me enough protection to where I can build up the epoxy layer, let it dry, and then come back and pry open the mold. Now I'm doing the same technique I did with the head. I'm building a brush-up mold for the body, as you saw there. And now that the head is dry, I'm going ahead and prying it open. And as you see, I have a hard shell there that I can insert the silicone head mold into. And so I'm just cutting it off of its base. I'm going to cut the head model out of there, and it comes out pretty easy. So I'm going ahead and securing it with just some elastic bands. I'm not the best mold maker. I'm willing to say I'm not the best mold maker. What I should have done retrospectively is put some molding keys in there to make it a little easier for the mold to stay together when I'm casting things. But it worked for what it did. Now I'm using a product called Foamit by Smooth-On, Foamit 3 Flux Foamit 3. And it's a 2-to-1 ratio that you're mixing, and you don't need a ton because this stuff will blow up really big. And once you mix, or once the part A and part B touch each other, you basically have 30 seconds to mix as fast as you can and get it into that mold, and it'll blow up and become a really cool model like this. You'll see the foam piece I'm taking out right now. It's the perfect exact replica of the plastic model that we printed. There's Twinken's head. Now we're just unmolding the body here, and I'm going to do the same process, unmolding it, cutting the body with the razor, taking the 3D printed mold model out of it, and then going ahead and casting the expanding foam into the mold. And now the great thing with this is I can now go ahead and build, 10 Twinkens if I wanted to. And all I do is just pour more expanding foam into the mold, and it come out as an exact copy. So it's great. If I wanted to build more, I could. I'm probably not going to, but it's great to have that option. So I don't have to remold everything every time I do this. Now I'm going ahead and patterning our Twinken, and basically how I'm doing that, I'm getting a bunch of tape. I'm covering the 3D print model with tape, and then I'm going to draw on some seams of where you see curvature. This takes a lot of practice. I've been doing this for a long time, since I was a teenager, and so you kind of learn as you go, where seams should be. You can always readjust once you peel it off. Some seams will reveal themselves where they should be if you see some buckling of where you should put different darts. And I think it's interesting, the Twinkens that they used in the movie, those had, for the prime one that they used for close-ups, it had a much larger head than the others, and it had 28 motors in that head, which I think is crazy when you think about it, how much movement that plush was capable of. The one I'm building today, I'm only putting 4 motors. So it'll be a little primitive compared to what was done, but it works. It works. So, and there were 4 Twinkens built. If I understood correctly, I talked to the guy that ended up building Twinken for the movie, and he said that they built 4 of them. 2 were radio controlled, which is the one I'm doing today. I'm doing a radio controlled Twinken. They had 1 cable controlled. I'm assuming that's the one that had the 28 motors in it. And then there was also a stuffed plush Twinken, or what they called a stunt Twinken. I don't know if that ever made it on screen, but there were 4 Twinkens built. And the ones with motors, he told me that they disassembled them within a year of shooting wrapping, and they reused those motors in other animatronic projects. So it's a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. Now initially when I was building this replica, I wasn't planning on making it animatronic. I really had no intention. I was planning on just putting wires in it and making it posable. But halfway through the build, I remembered I built this apparatus about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and I never ended up using it. And it happened to be the exact size that I needed for head movement. And so I decided, what the heck, I'm gonna do something new. I've never done an animatronic before. And so I'm gonna go ahead and try it out. And so I went ahead and hollowed out the body, enough for me to put the head mechanism. And basically you're gonna have there's two motors in there, two servos that are going to control the head. One is going to swivel it back and forth, and the other servo is going to move it up and down. Now we're just going to test those motors out, make sure they work, and they do still. So I think we're good to go. We're going to go ahead and hollow Twinken's head out now, enough so I can fit that mechanism inside his head smoothly. The fabric that I had was more of a cream white color, and Twinken is more of a grayish, whitish, silverish color. And so I did have to put a little dye into it to get the right color. But after we got the right color, went ahead and hand sewed the entire thing, which took a very long time. That in and of itself took, I don't know, 4 or 5 days to do. And now I'm just testing the motors with the head, make sure everything works still. I went ahead and painted inside the ears pink and inside the mouth pink as well. Just add a little extra color onto him. And obviously the fur is way too long as it looks right now, so I had to go ahead and shave a lot of it down to give the right length and to make it more like Twinken. And so that's what I'm going to do now. Use my razor, shaving the entire puppet, head, hands, arms, body, everything. Now I know this process is really sped up, but in reality this build took good almost 2 months from start to finish, and I spent a couple hours a night most nights on it actually. It was a very time intensive build just because all those molds took forever to do, and then all the casting, hand sewing, all the detail work, all the animatronic mechanisms and everything. It was just a very time intensive build, but it was worth it, and it was a lot of fun. I had a really fun time doing it. Now we're going ahead and installing Twinken's eyes. I'm just using some standard doll eyes you can get at any craft store. Went ahead and cut a hole for them, and then on the inside of Twinken's head, I fastened those in, and it kind of hold the entire head in, so it gives the face a little more dimension, as we'll see in a second once I fasten those in. It looks closer to how he looked in the movie. Again, I was just doing. Now I'm just doing some more detailing work on Twinken. I felt like it took a lot of hair off of him, and there was still more that I needed to take off. So it took a long time to get him looking like he should. I also went ahead and shaded around his eyes with some pastels to give a little more dimension and some shadow in there. Here I'm going to be installing the arm motors into Twinken. I'm just using some mini servos and connecting them into his arms. I didn't even end up building a mechanism for these. I literally just cut them into his body, and then installed the end into the arm. So it was a really simple ad. I wasn't actually planning on putting arms in Twinken initially, but you know, I decided since I did have extra servos, I might as well. Now, anything with motors, with servo motors, mechanisms, etc., is always going to need constant maintenance. So it's important when you're building animatronics or building puppet mechanisms of any kind that you leave yourself an access point. You know, that's why I have a big slit in Twinken's back and in the back of his head for me to access all those motors and mechanisms, because I mean, they do break quite often. They do need adjustment. So here I'm just doing some final detailing work on Twinken, giving him a little more shading, giving him a haircut, putting some hairspray on him to keep his hair all intact. Finally, we're gonna install his head, and there he is. He's taking shape.
So with our Twinken animatronic done, I want to show you a little bit how he works. So I have him back here. Basically, this Twinken has 4 servo motors that power him. The Twinken in the movie, the largest one, had 28 in that puppet, and so this is quite primitive compared to the one you saw on screen, but it gets the job done. So if you see off his back, he has all these wires coming out. Each of these wires hooks up to a different motor. So as you saw in the build, I put a motor in his arms, 1 each in his arms, and then 2 in his head. 1 swivels his head back and forth, and 1 will move up and down. All those wires go into this, which is called a radio transmitter. Now this communicates with the controller I'm going to show you in a little bit in order for me to control Twinken remotely. So I can be in the other room and Twinken will still work just fine. And the last piece is this 6-volt battery that hooks up to the battery pack and powers all those servos motors inside Twinken. So if we put them back here, let's see if it'll stay. There we go. See there, Twinken. Okay, this is the remote control that I use to control Twinken. These 2 toggles right here control a different part of him. So this one is going to move his head. See, he moves his head back and forth if I go that way. And I'll move his head up and down if I do that. And this toggle right here, this controls Twinken's arms. And so if we move it up and down, that arm moves, and you move it back and forth, his other arm moves. And if you move them back and forth really quick, it looks like he's waving. So, because this is radio technology, like I said, I could be in the other room controlling him, and he'd work just fine. You know, it'll work through walls. I don't know the distance. I think it's around 60 to 100 feet. I can be away from him, and it'll still work, which is pretty cool. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button below. Subscribe to my channel if you like this video and want to see more Barney build content like this. If there's a Barney prop or replica or something that you'd like me to build, see me build in the future, go ahead and leave that in the comment box below and I'll consider it. My name is Andrew Olson, aka Barney Builder, and we'll catch you next time.